Breaking news tonight. Britain is holding its breath after King Charles did something no monarch has dared attempt in 381 years. What unfolded inside Parliament yesterday has shaken Westminster to its very core and triggered what some are already calling the most dangerous constitutional crisis of the century. If you're just joining us, make sure you hit subscribe right now because what's happening could rewrite the future of British democracy, the monarchy, and the entire balance of power in this country. It started with 6 words. 6 words that made the entire House of Commons fall silent. The king walked in unannounced, uninvited, and without a single advisor by his side. Every MP froze as Charles strode to the dispatch box, his face set, his tone steady. He looked straight at Prime Minister Keir Starmer and said, "Parliament exists because the Crown allows it." For a heartbeat, nobody breathed. The sound of history echoed through that silence. You could feel the weight of centuries in that chamber. What drove the king to this moment? 2 days earlier, Starmer stood in the Commons and declared that the monarchy must modernize or become irrelevant, a remark that split the nation and sent ripples through the palace. Within hours, Buckingham Palace released a terse 34-word statement saying the king would address Parliament directly, with no script approved by Downing Street. That decision alone shattered every convention of modern monarchy. What followed has now exploded into an election year scandal that threatens to bring down the government. At 2:15 p.m. yesterday, the king entered the chamber without ceremony. There was no wave, no polite nod, just the sound of his footsteps on the marble floor. Starmer's color drained as Charles began speaking. "Prime Minister," he said, "you question whether the crown serves a purpose in modern Britain. Allow me to remind this house of something fundamental." He then opened a leather folder. Royal records dating back to 1688, listing every time Parliament had overstepped its bounds. "British stability rests on balance," he said, "not domination." He laid the folder down with a thud that echoed like a gavel. "I do not threaten, I remind. And history, Prime Minister, is not kind to those who tear down what they do not understand." Conservative MPs nodded quietly. Labour backbenchers stared at the floor. Even Jeremy Corbyn, normally animated, sat frozen with his arms crossed. Speaker Lindsay Hoyle later admitted it was the most extraordinary moment he had ever witnessed in the Commons. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, it was only beginning. Because while this confrontation between monarch and prime minister played out on camera, the country beyond Westminster was already boiling with anger, poverty, and frustration. Millions of Britons were struggling to heat their homes. Pensioners who served and worked their entire lives were being forced to choose between heating and eating, while Starmer's government poured millions into modernization programs that many saw as tone-deaf. Dorothy Williams, a 72-year-old retired nurse from Wakefield, said she hadn't turned on her heat in 3 weeks because her winter fuel allowance was cut. "I worked 40 years for the NHS," she said through tears, "and now I wear 3 jumpers indoors." Her story spread online like wildfire, a symbol of the government's moral blindness. And then, in an act unseen in 70 years of royal precedent, Charles refused to leave after speaking. He sat down in the gallery, crossed his arms, and stayed. The monarch sitting in judgment of Parliament. Every word of debate that followed unfolded under his gaze. Palace sources later confirmed this was Charles's personal decision, made against the advice of every senior aide. "Your Majesty," one advisor pleaded, "this breaks every rule." Charles's answer: "Perhaps some rules need to be broken when the nation's future is at stake." Inside number 10, panic set in. Starmer's planned defense speech collapsed into stammering improvisation. Markets plunged. Within 90 minutes, the pound had fallen over 2%, wiping billions from the FTSE 100. Traders were no longer reacting to policy. They were reacting to chaos. "It's not about economics anymore," one Barclays analyst said. "It's about whether Britain still functions." By 4 o'clock, rebellion had begun inside Labour itself. Lisa Nandy tweeted, "The Prime Minister has gone too far." Jess Phillips followed, "I entered politics to serve Britain, not to attack its foundations." Those posts went viral within minutes. International reactions poured in. Canada praised the king's restraint. Australia's opposition called Starmer reckless. And even Donald Trump weighed in on social media. King Charles showing real leadership. Starmer looks weak. By nightfall, protests had erupted across Manchester, Birmingham, Newcastle, and Leeds. Thousands flooded the streets chanting, "God save the king and Starmer out." In Liverpool, 5,000 gathered outside City Hall, in a Labour stronghold, waving Union Jacks. Outside Downing Street, 12,000 more chanted until police sealed off Whitehall. Inside, Starmer's own cabinet was tearing itself apart. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner stormed out of an emergency meeting shouting, "You've destroyed us!" Paintings rattled on the wall. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson muttered, "We can't survive this." Leaked WhatsApp messages from senior ministers revealed plans for a no-confidence vote as early as Tuesday. One message simply read, "Tuesday. 3 p.m., we move. Are you in?" 23 MPs responded with thumbs-up emojis. Even Sue Gray, Starmer's most trusted advisor, was reportedly mentally checked out, already preparing her resignation. And then came the bombshell. Leaked Cabinet Office documents proving that Downing Street had been warned by Buckingham Palace weeks earlier that continued attacks on the monarchy would provoke an intervention. The documents, dated October 3rd, listed 3 major concerns: removing royal approval from parliamentary bills, reducing the monarch's role in appointing bishops, and turning the crown into a purely ceremonial body. If authentic, these papers show Starmer knew exactly what he was doing. He either miscalculated catastrophically or deliberately ignited this crisis to distract from Labour's collapsing economy, rising inflation, and crumbling NHS waiting lists. And now, Britain stands at the edge of an election scandal unlike any in living memory. As Farage seized the moment, addressing thousands outside Parliament, his words cut deep. "Some politicians think Britain's traditions are relics to discard," he declared. "But those traditions are who we are." The crowd roared. His Reform UK party saw 47,000 new members in one night, crashing its website 3 times. Small donors flooded in. Polls now show Labour plummeting to 24%, their lowest since 2019, while Reform surges to 27, within striking distance of becoming His Majesty's opposition. For the first time in modern history, a populist movement built around defending the monarchy could reshape British politics forever. Inside Parliament, whispers of resignation grow louder by the hour. At least 7 Labour MPs are preparing to step down publicly during Monday's emergency session. Credit agencies are watching nervously. Moody's has already placed the UK on negative watch. Investors are questioning Britain's stability. The question now isn't whether Starmer can survive. It's whether Labour can survive Starmer. The Prime Minister, once confident and pragmatic, now looks haunted. His allies avoid him in corridors. Cabinet ministers whisper behind his back. And through it all, King Charles waits, silent, patient, calm, knowing that time and history are on his side. This is more than politics. This is a test of identity, of tradition, of how